Hello, everyone. My name is Kai Bickel Nygard. I'm here representing the Nygard family. And what we are is we're not scientists. We're a family that is interested in longevity and translational application of all of this great work that these gentlemen are talking about, these men and women are talking about, these great scientists. So I'd like to take you through our journey over the last 7 years. And in order to do that, we need to start at the beginning. So let's start. Let's see here. This gentleman right here is my father. And he is a fashion designer, fashion businessman. And if you see in the background there, you see a tree house, which was a vision of his when he was a young man. And I put this slide up there just to say that from a very young age, growing up in this environment, we were taught that anything is possible, that we can achieve anything, that we can think outside the box, that we can do anything. So I did grow up here with my dad, and we did build this house. And I also grew up with my mom in a regular small town in Washington State as well. So I had different backgrounds. Let me just get this thing here. There we go. Okay. What that is right there is an infrared sauna. And the reason that I have that up there is because my mom is actually a stage 4 cancer survivor. And I grew up in that house with her as she battled cancer. And she was the only one to survive in her group, actually. And part of that, we feel, is because she was also doing alternative therapies in addition to her treatment that she was getting. And one of them happened to be the infrared sauna. Now, why was this important for us? Well, as we looked into infrared saunas, it seems as if the infrared heat will help stimulate your body to detox a little better. And I can tell you that when she would get out of the sauna after her chemo and things like that, that sauna smelled horrible. And she also did a few other things like changing her water and a number of other things that we could get into, but only survivor, and this was a big influence on me. And I had 2 families growing up there in Washington. I had my mom, but while she was battling this cancer, which was a couple of years, I also stayed with this family. And that gentleman right there is Billy Frank Jr. He's a Native American icon in the Northwest. He's referred to now as the Martin Luther King Jr. of the Native Americans, recently passed away. And Billy taught me to stand up for what you believe in, as he stood up for his tribal treaty rights and won. And he also taught me the importance of the environment, the ecosystem is very important to our health. We're talking about all of this great technology, but we forget that a healthy environment is a huge factor on our longevity. And this was like my second family growing up in Washington, and Billy's partner, essentially his wife, Sue Crystal, she also came down with cancer while I was in high school, and she lost that battle. She didn't do any alternative therapies, and I watched her wither away from chemo and radiation. It was a very sad moment, and this was a big influence on me because now I was thinking to myself, maybe we don't have it all figured out. Maybe there's still a lot to learn in medicine. So when I got out of high school and I started to think about what I wanted to do, I wasn't really into women's clothing. I was thinking, I was a little bit lost. And the simple enjoyment of something like a McDonald's milkshake was something that I was into. I was eating very poorly, and I had a moment, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go quickly through these slides. I had a moment, actually, where I was drinking one of these shakes, and I wasn't feeling very good. And I said, geez, if only this chocolate milkshake could be good for me. If only it could be good for me. And you know what happened? A few days later, I got invited out to a restaurant with one of the top nutritionalists in the United States, and he handed me one of these as soon as I walked in. Now what that is that was his version of a chocolate milkshake. That was raw, sprouted nut milk, living nut milk essentially, with raw rainforest chocolate, goji berries, cacao nibs, medicinal mushrooms, a number of different things. The whole concept is that we can take the best of the best from all over the world and we can bring it together right now and we can drink it and we don't have to settle. And now I'm drinking milkshakes, I'm drinking nutrition, and this light bulb went off in my head as soon as I drank that wait a minute, wow, what is this world that we still haven't explored yet in the world of health, nutrition, preventative wellness? So what I did was I organized some events at our house to get my dad and my family inspired on this track as well. And I brought in a bunch of different social entrepreneurs and nutritionalists and people like that, and they gave presentations. And this particular slide stood out to me because under certain types of photography, you can see different, obviously, phenomena. And with this, I began to wonder, what's really going on that we can't see out there? Are there energy fields in our food that we don't recognize? What is going on? So many questions came from this. It really sparked off a firestorm in my mind about what we're missing right now in general. So my dad he was getting into it little by little, but this was the catalyst for him. And behind him, actually, that's their old home. My dad's a rags to riches story. And that is him and his sister and my sister. And the woman there in the green in the middle was the catalyst for this whole movement. That is my grandmother, his mother. And when she developed a leaky heart valve and her health began to fade, all of a sudden, when I asked my dad, hey, can we go to this regenerative medicine conference? Can we begin to go and explore these things? He all of a sudden said, you know what, Kai? Yes. I will stop everything and I will go and I will start to explore this in the interest of helping my mother, his mother, my grandmother. And so that's really where my dad began to really gain traction, was to help his mom on this quest for finding new technology that we can use right now to extend our lives. And ultimately what happened was we brought her in for a preventative, or I guess a procedure to fix that leaky heart valve. And something went wrong in that procedure. An artery was struck as they were doing it, internal bleeding. And now all of a sudden we find our grandmother who walked in there, who had a lot of vitality. Now she's stuck in the intensive care unit. And they're telling us, look, she's got less than 10% chance to leave this place, because every day that goes by, your chances go down and down and down. Now, we're not the type of family to just sit back and say, okay, that's cool. We'll just do what we can and pray for her or whatever. That wasn't us. And we went to the hospital and we said, hey, what can we do now? Can we make a case study out of this? Can we go and find other technologies that maybe aren't approved yet? Can we apply that to her in an effort to try to help her? Because we just found stem cell therapies. We'd found a lot of different technologies. And they originally said yes. They said go for it. So we did. And we activated N-Force. We got on our plane and we flew around the world and we discovered and we found things. And we came back to that hospital very excited. And we said, you know what? All we have to do is take some of her blood. We're going to send it off to Israel. We're going to they're going to isolate the stem cells. We're going to inject it back in. Very excited. Hospital says, you know what? Sorry, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to get a chance to do any of that. And you know, this is actually for everyone here, because I feel like I'm speaking to Korea in general. And we talk about legislation, we talk about making a difference. This right here, to me, is something that we could do to make a difference. If you can allow in your legislation for case studies, for people who have low hope, for them to go ahead and try experimental procedures. Maybe they haven't even gotten to the point where there's a human trial yet, but what's your other option? Your other option is just to sit there and let someone die? I mean, we would have gladly signed any waiver, paid any money to go ahead and tried some of these incredible things that we're learning about that may not be ready for people yet. But just allowing the possibility for case studies on people who really need it because they don't have any options, I think would be huge in legislation and would allow for a lot of breakthroughs. So it left us with very little choice. And rather than just letting her die there, we went, and guess where we had to go? We had to go to a third world country. We had to go to this hospital right here. We flew her from a world-class hospital in our world-class plane to a third world country, which looks like that. And you know what? I actually wish we would have gone there sooner, because they actually allowed for us in the Dominican Republic at the time to bring in the stem cell therapist, to bring in the nutrition IV specialist, to bring in all these alternative or integrative disciplinary approaches to work on her, to give it a shot. But by that time, unfortunately, it was too late. We didn't even get to do the stem cells. But we went through the motions and we saw them all working together harmoniously. And we said to ourselves, man, this feels good. Yes. But it was too late. But it was a defining moment for us Because at that time, then, my dad and I looked at each other and said, you know what, Dad? You're next. And rather than just sit back and wait for something, we took it upon ourselves to go out and find what technologies are still there. You know, we always act in a time of crisis. It propels us to take action. But we didn't want to just be reactive. We don't want to continue to react in a time of crisis. Sure, we made a lot of gains in that month, but we want to keep that pursuit going. So we dedicated 50% of our resources and time, because we're a fashion company, to the pursuit of finding longevity technologies. And that's been my full-time commitment, and my dad has allocated as much time as he can, which is about 50%, of his time. And so where did we go as we started to pursue this? We came to Korea, because when we looked around, we thought to ourselves, what is the best hospital? What is the best anti-aging facility? And guess where we came up with? We took our plane, and we flew here. We went to Chaum. We did. And because it's beautiful, and because Dr. Cha and Chaum, they had a reputation when we went there for being on the cutting edge and for doing things that included integrative approaches. And we got exposed to a lot of new ideas, including bioinsurance, where I actually banked my NK cells when I was there. I was 25 years old, and I'm really happy I did it. And this started a little journey for us. Now, my dad learned about something that Cha was working on, and some other scientists too, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, SCNT, and you see sort of this model there. But essentially what it is you would take a cell, an embryonic cell, you would extract the DNA from that cell. You would take one of your cells, you would extract the DNA from that, let's say a skin cell, and you'd put it in that embryonic cell. And if you can get that cell to culture, if you can get it to now begin to create more cells, you could differentiate those cells and have potentially any type of cell matched specifically to you. This was fascinating, and my dad really grabbed a hold of this. He said, you know what, this is something I want to get behind. I don't want to wait around for this. I don't want people to get caught up because they hear the word clone or something like that, a cloned stem cell line, oh my goodness. You know, he said, I'm going to push this. I'm going to go after this because everyone knows in the stem cell world that your own cells are always the best, and this could be a huge breakthrough technology that we want to see advanced. For me, I came home and I went to a party, a Vanity Fair party, and ran into Terrell Owens, who's a Hall of Fame, going to be a Hall of Fame football player. He was just done, and I said, Terrell, have you heard of stem cells? He said, no. I said, listen, I just came back from Korea, and I've learned about stem cells, and let's connect your doctor, Dr. James Andrews, very world-famous sports doctor. Let's connect them to the Cha group, and they did, and they were very excited to go ahead and have Terrell come down and do stem cells, and Terrell did. I made the paper doing that. Great. Maybe that was one of the first stem cell therapies in the NFL. I'm not sure. But it began to start something as well for us, interacting with whether it's CEOs or professional athletes. As we began to make discoveries, we're now seeing them sort of translate. And Terrell got those stem cells, and he ran very fast off of them. And I began to meet Nobel Prize winners, some of them outside-the-box thinkers, and this one in particular was telling me that he believed the body communicated through subtle electromagnetic impulses in the blood, that there's actually signaling going on, a language going on in the blood. Now, whether or not you agree with that, it was still a fascinating conversation for me to hear that. And he sent me actually off to a water conference in Vermont, which is a very obscure conference. And I have to tell you that when I went to this conference, I sat there for 3 days listening. There were 2 other Nobel Prize winners in the audience, and they talked about nothing but water for 3 straight days, if you can believe it. Nothing but water. I watched these guys have arguments. I watched all these slideshows. You know, the one takeaway I knew for certain after this conference was that we still have a lot to learn about water. Water is not just simply H2O. It has a lot more going on in it than just that. Now, I have to show you my dad's video because while I was doing that, he was doing this.
Since the dawn of time, great men have challenged the status quo and dared to dream.
For every new pioneer, only time can unlock the future. Only history will tell the story.
This is CNN Breaking News. The University of Oregon made a major announcement on stem cells, one that could lead to breakthroughs in the treatment of Parkinson's, cancer, and many other diseases. For the first time, human skin cells have been transformed into embryonic stem cells. Dr. Shukrat Matalipov of the University of Oregon were successfully able to insert an adult skin cell into an unfertilized human egg, which had been stripped of its existing DNA.
So that way the stem cells we create, they would be compatible if we transplant these tissues back into patients.
The process, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT, is not new, but the results are and are considered to be a quantum leap forward in the reversal of aging and the treatment of disease.
Stem cells came to its own with Dolly the sheep in 1997. Up until now, the problem has been one of rejection. Our body simply rejects all foreign objects put into it, including somebody else's stem cells.
It's been 15 years since we invented embryonic stem cell. No one figured out to use it.
You know, ever since scientists discovered embryonic stem cells, they wanted to be able to tailor-make those cells with the genetic material of the patients they're trying to treat. And this is the technique that would finally be able to accomplish that goal.
From the woman's egg, we took out her DNA, put my old 70-year-old DNA in its place, grew it in vitro, developed embryonic stem cells, age 0. This is huge. This is a game changer. This could eliminate all disease. This perhaps is immortality.
Peter Nygard, a Finnish-Canadian fashion tycoon and self-made billionaire who parlayed an $8,000 loan into an empire with annual profits in the hundreds of millions.
I want to live forever or die trying.
Bring the action.
One man, younger at heart than those half his age, living a life most could only dream of, yet sharing his collective fortune with our collective human fate. To live forever. A 1,000-year-old quest made by the legendary Ponce de Leon, the Spanish explorer who spent his days searching for the fountain of youth.
Ponce de Leon had the right idea. He was just too early. That was then. This is now.
Preach. If you want something different, beloved, you got to do something different.
This has always been a 4-step plan. To find the right technology, to find the right country, to write the proper laws, and to get the correct facility.
Human beings in a mind.
Currently, there are 2 leading technologies in stem cell duplication, SCNT and what is called IPS, induced pluripotent stem cells.
But when I asked anybody which would actually be better, IPS or SCNT, well, of course SCNT, if we could ever get past the religious objections and all the bad PR it's getting.
Last time when it was announced by some Korean researchers, it turned out to be a hoax, right?
It was a fraud.
SCNT was dropped altogether. Nobody was interested in it any longer. Nobody except me.
Critics say the stem cells come from destroying embryos, and my newsmaker tonight says that that is simply not true.
The way in which these stem cell lines were derived is from embryos that are created in the process of in vitro fertilization. And in fact, there are hundreds of thousands of these embryos that are simply being discarded.
We throw in the garbage. We shouldn't do that.
And so in 2009, Peter Nygard creates Nygard Biotech, employing 4 top scientists from around the world in the field of SCNT, channeling his tremendous energy towards finding the missing link in stem cell technology.
The top scientist in SCNT.
I'll give you my DNA now.
And one of them was Russian. And of course the Russian was discovered it.
I'm very glad in any event that you stayed on it, that you made this huge discovery.
Well, this is a very well-respected, well-known team of scientists out at Oregon Health and Science University.
The technology is real, so it works. It's done deal.
I may be the only person in the world who has my own embryonic stem cells growing in a petri dish. Can you imagine that? In that petri dish, that is me before I was born. Science fiction? Scientific fact.
When we die, the money we can't keep, but we probably spend it all because the pain ain't cheap.
With the Western world still embroiled in political debate over embryonic stem cells, Peter set out to find a suitable host country.
We traveled everywhere in the world now for the last 2 years, just looking.
In Shenzhen, Peter forges a partnership with BGI, the world leader in genome sequencing, technology that eliminates all guesswork in medical diagnosis. Combined with SCNT, he would possess both the technology to target future health risks and correct them before they ever happen. But owning the right technology would mean nothing without a country to embrace its use.
All right, I got to stop it there in the interest of time as I'm running out of it. But you can see that we've made a huge effort, and in particular on his side, he's looking at SCNT as one of the keys. So, looking forward, I began to explore some of the other great thinkers as we continue down this road. And what Einstein was interesting when you start looking at him about health. They said, someone asked Einstein how it felt to be the smartest man alive. Einstein said, I don't know, you'll have to ask Nikola Tesla. Now, I don't know how many of you guys have looked into what Tesla has done, but he's a fascinating person that we ought to spend more time researching. And when you look at Tesla, he says, the day science begins to study the non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. And Tesla being a physicist, maybe we ought to start thinking about what the physicists have to say about biology. And when he says non-physical phenomena, what does he mean? He means the invisible field. We have all this information coming into our cell phones, for example, that we don't see, but we know it's there. And that's a very interesting area for us, and one that we began to continue to explore. So I went to this conference in Germany. Germany has a lot of these great thinkers there. This particular one is focused on resonance, photons, the electromagnetic field, vibration, sound, how it interfaces with the human body. And it was very, very interesting as we went down this. Actually found some practitioners that are actively using conductivity and resonance and having great success. And they're now calling themselves resopaths. And so I also started to look into what Dr. Moto had to do. Now, Moto's a little bit controversial. Some people say his science didn't check out, whatnot. Well, we spent time with his apprentice who went in there as someone who was a skeptic and left someone who's a true believer. And Moto's very interesting because, again, we get back to water and disharmonic frequencies and their effect on water. It turns out that water is very reactive. It's reactive to the way that you can play music to it, for example, and you're going to get different crystals that are going to form it, different patterns that are going to form it. This all goes into that invisible field. What are we doing? And since we're so much about water, we are water, this is a very interesting topic. Now, back to water, H2O, there was another technology that we found, and I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to just briefly go through this. There was another technology we found in Europe that was having great effects for cancer and for a number of other conditions. And what they think they've done is create a very stable liquid oxygen, essentially. They feel that they can take the hydrogen and stimulate the water so that the hydrogen begins to gas off, leaving these small oxygen molecules to go and attach to other water molecules, and that when you drink it, and you can measure this, by the way, but when you drink it, now these little extra oxygens are in your body, and you can measure even on your skin the oxygen rising in your cells. Now, in terms of proof, it was interesting because I gave this to some professional athletes, and this was a professional athlete that came over to this Resopath, who this guy right now is getting tested through conductivity by the Resopath, who accessing a point on his foot and finding what's working with him. And he's got a photon light going on his elbow, his pitching elbow there. But when we gave him the water, it was very interesting because we gave him this water, and next thing I know, him and the rest of the superstars on the team are now drinking this water because he texts me, he says, Kai, I don't know what you did, but this water, when I drink it, I'm throwing it 3 miles an hour faster. I hit 92 miles an hour on the radar gun when I drink it, and I hit 89 when I don't. So they put this on Instagram. It says, Kai, thanks for hooking me and my teammates up with some of this water. This stuff is amazing. Helped me finish strong and throwing harder than I did all year. And it's just interesting as we explore this, as we continue to explore science, that we're finding breakthroughs, that we're finding products that are actually working when we give them to some of these folks in professional sports or executive health. Now, Dr. Cha and the Cha group have been strong allies of mine. I have a ton of respect for Dr. Cha, and I'm always going to stand with him. He's a great man. And he went out, and I told him about this. I tell him about a lot of these things that we discover along. And what he did, he said, Kai, this sounds interesting. Let's explore it. So he brought a bunch of scientists with him, and we went around Europe at Medicine Week. We explored a lot of these technologies. He went and explored these baths, and we found ways to get some of this technology to Cha and the Cha group to begin to study. And I want to quickly show you this little reenactment here on vibration. I don't know if we can get this to play right now. But I want to show you how vibration seems to work with the body. And I'm also going to mention this. Have you guys ever heard of the Schumann field? I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Schumann wave before, but they've measured actually the Earth, that there's this electromagnetic impulse coming from the Earth called Schumann, 7.83 hertz. And there's been a lot of really positive health effects with people who have studied that. And actually, that's part of the whole reason for grounding technology. And it's funny, the more advanced we get, the more that we find that we need to come back to the Earth. And we need to come back to the natural way of things, and there are tons of benefits there. And this little clip right here is just simply to show you that when you put different harmonics on this tone generator, when you stimulate it with different frequencies and different hertz, that actually this does translate to the physical world. So you're seeing that 345 hertz, look what that form is, what's happening there. And we have so much that we haven't explored yet. We all know that there's still so much to learn, that we have to stay open-minded. We have to keep and embrace integrative disciplines. We want everyone at the table. We want no idea to be off the table, because this is the most complicated question that we have in the world, is how to advance the human body and work with it. So you get the idea, and I'm almost done here. Last slide. That's Panama, and the only reason I put that up there is because now we find ourselves going to Panama for stem cells. Why? Because of the legislation. And it really comes down to legislation. Legislation on whether or not you embrace aging as a disease. Legislation on whether or not you allow for case studies, for example. If people are in a bleak or dire situation, do you allow for that family to maybe pay extra and do a case study to see if we can take some of these experimental procedures and see if they'll work? And that's the key. So I ask all of you here to really consider what everyone has to say about legislation, because if your legislation changes, you will attract the best entrepreneurs, you'll attract the best scientists, and you will attract the best customers who will all come to Korea and who will recognize Korea as the global leader in longevity science. 감사합니다.